Hello, fellow riders of the hypnotic storm. I'm Chris Thompson, and this is the Brain Software Podcast, episode 163, coming to you from Toronto, Canada. In today's discussion, Mike Mandel and I talk about the power of words and how they can be hypnotic, so stay tuned.
Hey kids, it's time for the Spunky and Beezer Show, the only place to be.
That's right, Dingus. It's the best place to be at the right time for you. And it's a magical place, isn't it?
You bet, because we're up in the treehouse, and as you know, it's the only place that's all about you.
Yes, you. And it's the only place in the world where you're spunky.
And you're Beezer.
But seriously, folks, whatever happened to that old tranquility we used to know? These are days of victory, damn it!
So let's welcome to the center of the ejaculon, a man who only drives electric cars, a man who's found a new love for the music of the 1960s, and the fittest 46-year-old man in this or any other room, Fritz Thompson!
Thank you, Mike. It is a pleasure to not know what the heck you meant by most of that, but it is always fun to be here, because remember that this is a podcast where we epitomize three values.
Yes, we do.
That life should be
effortless,
enjoyable,
and vaguely annoying to other people.
That's right. Even you.
Even you.
Because this is about you.
It's always about you.
All right. In all seriousness, we're going to have a great episode here where we're talking about hypnotic language and simple words that you can use in your everyday conversation, words that you can use with your kids, with your family, with your spouse, with your boss, with your clients, anybody, just words that help people change.
Excellent. And we'll describe that in some detail before we go into it. But we have here, Chris, we've got the think tank words of the day.
Yeah, let's move on to those.
And these have come directly from the Savo Bukacek think tank, not from online. And the first one is pole. The second is amoeba.
Amoeba.
The third is trigger, since we always use three. So what do you come up with pole? I get a few things right away there.
Pole. Yeah, I'm thinking, I don't know why, just the first thing that came to mind for me was a fireman's pole sliding down a pole.
Okay, it's interesting. But I thought of magnetic poles right away.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And also, you are Polish. You're Polish heritage.
I do have some Polish background.
Well, you are a Pole. I mean, it's not that you...
I'm partially a Pole. That's right.
It's not that you have Polish background. You are a Pole.
That's right.
Now, so how does that fit in with this?
Well, with my example of a fireman sliding down a pole, I'm just thinking about ease of not easing into something, but like the ease at which you can do something, making something economic, easy to do.
Economical?
Yeah, the economics of movement, let's say. Oh, right. In this case.
Well, now you're back to Erickson with that. That's how he detected trance. He said there's an economy of movement.
Economy of movement. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. Economics. I'm turning it to like some financial discussion. So yeah, I go to sliding down a pole, economy of movement. Can't even talk. Need another coffee. What's next?
Well, we got amoeba, and an amoeba.
What do you get there?
It throws out pseudopods, right? They aren't real arms. It's testing the surroundings with its pseudopods, determining which way to move. And that, to me, is very much how we interact with people hypnotically. We're testing with our words and that. We're watching for a response and maybe withdrawing those words and moving in a different way. It, to me, speaks about flexibility of behavior.
And also the idea of simplicity, since an amoeba is a single-celled organism.
Correct.
Right? So that's just the idea of let's keep it simple, but also calibrate.
Yes, I like that. Yeah. Always be calibrating, right? ABC. Especially when there's a pole in the neighborhood. Now, what about trigger? Did I just trigger you? You just triggered me.
Yeah. Trigger. Yeah, I think back to actually grade 11 chemistry, I believe it was, when I was in high school, and the idea of a concept of activation energy. So you need to add a small amount of energy to get a reaction started, and then it cascades. Maybe you have some exothermic reaction or whatever it is, but you usually have to add some small amount of energy to a reaction to get it going.
That's interesting.
And then boom, it's like a trigger.
Right. That's interesting. To me, as soon as you said that, it made me think of a nuclear bomb when you're imploding. with spherically shaped explosives. You're imploding Pu-239, and in the middle you have an initiator that's going to put out a neutron stream to start the runaway chain reaction. So again, now we're back to chain reaction. So I'm saying this whole thing about—
Stop talking about this crazy stuff, man.
When I think of trigger, Dr. Ambrose, I think of Trigger the Wonder Horse, Roy Rogers' horse, this golden palomino, whatever the heck that is. I'm not a horse guy, but they're nice. So I'm thinking you got the pseudopods of the amoeba, you're testing, withdrawing, and then you're going to look for that moment that you can trigger a response that's going to change everything.
Okay, so let's, fit that in with hypnotic language that we're going to be talking about on this podcast. It's a nice overall concept. Keep it simple. Have economy with your words, and always be calibrating, always be looking for opportunities to use some of this, detect whether it's working,
and
detect whether you've got someone in the emotional state that you want them in.
Right. Now, we're saying hypnotic words and more, and we need to clarify here.
Right.
In no way are we saying that, if you say this word to someone, they'll go into hypnosis and you can make them quack like a duck. Yeah, that's nonsensical.
These are not magic words that cause magic reactions. These are building blocks for helping, let's say, elicit emotions.
Okay.
To create openness to suggestion. And that's going to be very much driven by emotion. If somebody is in the emotional state of curiosity, let's say, they're going to be more open to an idea than if they were in the emotional state of anger.
Sure, that makes total sense. And then, of course, emotions will set whatever we're doing anyway.
All right.
So let's look at these as words of influence, words of transformation, and some words are words of reconsideration that can cause people to look at things in a brand new way. And I want to talk about things that you need in our pre-frame here. If you're going to make this stuff work and really help people with your words, your language, you've got to have rapport with them.
You must have rapport.
Because without rapport, you might change them. You might help them change, but the change won't last.
And I like your concept here, and you've taught this many times, that you've got this secret from John Grinder about acting as if the other person in the conversation is the most fascinating person in the world. Simplest shortcut ever, right?
Right.
And if you combine that with the next point, intention on our list, intend to be in rapport with them.
Yes.
I mean, you could intend many things, but one of the things that's worth intending is to be in rapport.
Expect it to happen, want it to happen, will it happen, it will happen. We're back to Dave Ellman. And when you pretend congruently with your entire being that the person is the most fascinating, important person you've ever met in your life, continue to pretend that during the discourse, the communication with them. Maintain that the whole time. That will change your body language, your mirror neurons, everything will respond to that. And then we have to think in terms of vocal inflection as well. You don't want your hypnotic language to sound frickin' weird.
Oh, you don't want to be doing the upspeak thing, right? Because this can get really interesting.
Or you don't want to be like the guy with phone. Remember I said, I didn't go into a trance now. And as you begin to listen to all that I'm saying, you can find the deeper.
Yeah.
It's just the guy like doing Tad James, doing Richard Bandler, doing Erickson or something. It's just like, it was weird.
A good example, I'm just going to throw this out there as something that can be useful. So, Mike, of course, you've done so many stage hypnosis shows over your career before you retired from the stage. And we recorded a couple of them and put them inside of the Mike Mandel Hypnosis Academy. So quick plug, if you want to watch these recordings, sign up for a free trial to the Mike Mandel Hypnosis Academy right from our website, MikeMandelHypnosis.com, and you'll find these recordings. The reason I'm bringing them up right now, you're probably wondering why.
I'm wondering why.
This up? Because in the... I suppose we can talk about it as being the pre-talk. What do you call it when you're on stage and you're just talking and you haven't invited anyone?
It's a pre-talk.
It's a pre-talk. You're introducing, you're telling stories, you're making jokes. It's layered with hypnotic communication, folks. It is layered thick with hypnotic communication.
So when they come up, they're halfway gone.
But here's the thing. It doesn't sound weird. It sounds like an ordinary storytelling situation. He's explaining stuff. He's making people laugh. But there's hypnotic suggestion all throughout it, and nobody notices it at all, except for students who have been trained in hypnosis.
Right. And a lot of it, too, Chris, is through presuppositions and, when you come up and go into a trance, this will, like this kind of thing.
So that's exactly, and that's my point in bringing this up, is it doesn't sound weird. It doesn't sound like hypnosis. It just sounds like a guy who's telling you hilarious stories and describing what's about to happen.
Yeah, it doesn't.
But it's all
hypnosis
hypnotic.
doesn't have to be weird. As you know, I'm really glad I'm not on stage anymore. The number of times I think about it and go, "Oh man, I'm so glad I don't have to drive to Centennial Hall tonight in a blizzard and then do a show and drive back through the other side of the blizzard."
You had dreams, right? Where you woke up and you realized it was just a dream.
I dreamed I had to do shows. I even dreamed I did a keynote. But yes, just a dream, which is fantastic. But you know, you don't have to, it doesn't have to sound weird. I mean, I just don't have to watch Ormond McGill with a little gong walking around, hitting a gong in front of people and them going into hypnosis.
It's just bizarre.
And calling it the Oriental method of hypnosis. Like, what? Anyway, you know my thoughts on that. I'm not going to take a shot at the old guy because he's long gone. But this can be so subtle. I've even explained it during the pre-talk for hypnosis show that there were two guys. We're just going to call them Steve and Brian. When I was going to high school, we had two different routes we could walk to school. And when the three of us would walk together, I'd leave my apartment, walk around, get Steve at his place, and we keep walking to Brian's place, and then we continue to school, one of a couple of different routes that were essentially the same distance, but we'd vary it every now and then. I could talk to them in a certain way, and they'd get irritated. And it took some time to build this up. And then I somehow managed to discover embedded commands by accident. And saying, you know, I wonder if you're going to fight again, this kind of thing. And they'd get pissed off with each other. And I can remember they'd fight and wrestle on people's lawns and get really mad and all dirty. And I'd just step out of the frame and think it was hilarious. But it became context anchored. And I can remember Steve actually had Brian had Steve by the lapels. And Steve saying, "Brian, we don't have a problem. It's him. Can't you see? Can't you see?" Just pleading with him. And him saying, "All I can see is you're really pissing me off again." And they'd fight again. And it just got ridiculous. When we're off the air, I'll tell you some of the lines I used to get them going. This is not for general consumption.
Okay.
I was a kid. But weirdly, Chris, NLP terms, this became context anchored.
Yeah.
So simply walking home with me, if we'd go in the same route, they'd start getting pissed off with each other and fighting again. So that was all set up just with hypnotic language. So let's talk about some of these right now.
So right before we get in, I see in the notes you have here the power of embedded commands. Should we teach that first so that the rest of this can be
in fact, I'd like to see you do that.
All right. So embedded commands are simply the way you deliver an embedded command is typically through what we call analog marking. And you can mark things out. We say analog marking because it isn't a digital thing. It isn't on or off. I can slightly pause before I say something. I can drop my tonality a little bit. I can mark it out with an analog gesture, like putting my hand out or touching someone on the shoulder as I say something.
Right.
There's all kinds of ways that we can embed commands. But the idea is if you take let's not overcomplicate this. I've seen a lot of books and other instruction out there where they take complex statements or commands, break it up into segments, and then embed it throughout different like the unconscious is supposed to put all this together and go, oh, he really means read that book tonight, you know. And
I'm skeptical.
Let's practice this stuff way simpler. If you want someone to go out to a restaurant tonight, let's say that is what you want. That's what you're going to use as your embedded command. You're going to you're going to mark out, go out to a restaurant tonight in an ordinary sentence. So it could be something as simple as, you know, the last time I was in Montreal, I remember that we were talking about where we might go to eat. And my friend Tom, he turned to me and he said, "Where do you want to go out to eat tonight?" And that's using quotes to bury and embedded, to embed something.
And of course, you're turning and looking at the person as you're saying the embedded command. And the key is you want to do it subtly enough that the conscious mind is unaware of it, but clearly enough that the unconscious picks up on it. It slips past the critical faculty.
Yeah.
That's good, Chris. Well,
now we can make it even simpler, right? So let's just pick a 2-word embedded command. Something like,
get insomnia?
Yeah, yes, get insomnia. You've done that to people lots of times. Or feel good. Just something as simple as feel good. You know, it's important for people to feel good at times.
Yeah. And it's very easy to learn to be really happy. You know,
enjoy life.
Yeah.
Simple 2-word statements can be great embedded commands.
So drop your voice, pause before them, touch the person, make eye contact as you say them. Just practice. Layer these things on. If they're catching you, you're being too obvious. So try to do it very, very carefully. I've given you try right off
there
the
you
bat.
go.
Now,
all
try
right,
is our first word. Try is a word we use when failure is intended. We want someone to fail. We tell them to try because try implies failure. If at first you don't succeed, try again and fail. Keep failing. So when I would work with someone to cause them to forget their name on stage, I'd say, try to remember it. And I'd shove the microphone in their face, putting them under greater pressure, and they wouldn't be able to.
Yeah.
So try is a very simple one. Whenever you want failure, try to locate that problem again and discover it's gone.
Yeah, this is a great word. Once you have helped someone overcome something, you can simply ask them, try to notice that feeling that used to disturb you. Notice it's gone.
Yeah. And when I'd get rid of a phobia for someone or anything like that, I'd say, try as hard as you can to get it back. I want you to try really hard.
Yeah. So we often mess with people and say, try not to obsess over this all day.
That's right. Because there's no need to lie awake all night thinking about it.
Let's use this for good.
Okay. Now just use it for good.
Yeah. Just is the next word on our list. And actually, I think just is on our language card deck as well.
I believe it is.
Here. Just, simple 4-letter word, but not a bad word, a very good word, will cause people, as you were saying in the intro remarks, Mike, to reconsider, right?
Yes, that's right. But it simplifies everything. It causes reconsideration based on simplicity. I'm not going to ask anything difficult. I want you to just start to fall into a trance.
Yeah.
Just sit there and listen. You don't have to do anything at all.
And you can do this to yourself too. We were talking about this actually with procrastination, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Well, I just don't feel like going to the gym right now, or I don't feel like reading a chapter of that book I promised myself I'd finish. You can just say to yourself, well, I'm going to just do this for 5 minutes and see how it goes.
Yeah. All I have to do is just do 3 minutes of exercise and then I can stop. But once you start getting the groove and you'll do the exercise anyway, which is really handy. But anytime you want to encourage someone to do something, minimize the difficulty and the commitment on their part by using just sit there and begin to go into a trance.
You can see how this fits in with embedded commands already, because let's say in a sales situation, somebody could say, it's not important for you to decide to buy this today, but just consider how your life might change once you do own it.
Brilliant.
Whatever it is, right?
That's brilliant.
It's not important for you to apply these hypnotic techniques right away, but just consider how much better your life might be.
Excellent.
Once you're an elegant communicator.
Now, you know what's interesting about this too, Chris? We have, I like that, once you're an elegant communicator. Once again, you're bringing in presupposition that this is going to happen. And when you're framing a presupposition in a positive, people have no reason to resist it.
That's right.
That's right. Now, what about but? But I call the incongruence unpacker. Now, we're saying B-U-T, not B-U-T-T.
But. So if you say to someone, I really like the way your hair is done, but I wonder if everyone's going to feel that way. Whoa, you're going to undermine what you just said, right?
I'm thinking of it like I went, did you like that? I actually went, that must be getting old. That's freaking weird, man. Well, we'll edit that out. But it's interesting. Here's the way I heard it, the use of it. Using this to unpack incongruence when you hear an ellipsis.
Right, of course.
What do you think of our new house? Oh, it's nice, but you're hearing the ... the ellipsis.
Yeah, when you hear that ellipsis,
then
it's an
implied
but. Right.
And they will give you the deleted information.
So you can, that's it. If you hear it directly in someone else's communication, the way I've explained this to my kids many times is when you say but, it essentially crosses out everything that you said before it. I don't mean to be rude, but
yeah.
Come on. And then you go and say something rude, right?
Right. That's why you can use and instead.
Yeah.
If you want to keep rapport, use and instead, because but does tend to delete everything that went in front of it. You've done a great job. You've worked really hard for the company, but we think, so everything's gone.
It's a dangerous word at times, but it's a useful word at times. Mike was just explaining here. If you detect incongruence, throw in a but and let the other person fill in the blanks.
Yes, and sit on the silence.
Get the deleted information, right?
And just wait.
And if you catch yourself using but, when you instead should be using and, get in a habit of using and. Yes, and.
That's nice. It's easier, too, for people who are Enneagram Type 9 who don't want the conflict. You're okay with it, but a lot of them aren't. And So using and instead, then there's no conflict.
Yeah.
You're right. I know how you feel.
Just think about the typical argument a husband and wife might have. You never clean up the house. You know, the universals are thrown out. Never, you know, instead of, but I just cleaned it last week. You know, instead of you saying, you're right. I often don't do enough. And I did it last week. What part of that did you like best? Which of those should become my regular chores that all start helping more? And you'll feel better when that happens.
Definitely. And Chris, you've also just reminded me, all of you listening, whenever you start getting criticism like that, instantly dissociate and look at the situation from the outside. It will stop you reacting and going to level 2 argumentation, which gets away from data and starts to move into adrenaline trickle, which is what we don't want. Right. So what if, Chris? What
if you could master this? Well, what if puts people in a frame of mind of considering it as possible, and it also uses what we call the as-if frame. Well, it's not like we invented that word, the as-if frame, but what would it be like if we had come up with the as-if frame, Mike?
What if you discover that even though you're being fired from your job, Chris, there's so much more potential out there that you might find something wonderful? What if? No, I mean, if you can use it with anything, right? Oh, this relationship's ended, my life's ruined. I know that's how you feel. And what if this is your greatest opportunity now?
What if this was the most important decision that you made in the last year?
Your hand is on my side of the table.
There we go.
Stay back.
This is a really good thing. When things aren't going well in someone's mind, in their perception, oh, something's wrong, there's all kinds of problems. Well, what if, and we did this with the COVID situation, when the entire lockdowns and all that stuff started, I think we did how to make 2020 your best year ever. And it was something like, what if
this is your greatest opportunity?
This is your greatest opportunity.
Yeah. And a lot of people grabbed that by the horns, to use the metaphor, and began finding ways to work online who had never done it before.
Yep. It's not overall, it's not a great thing by any stretch of the imagination, but there are ways that we can spin things as positive. What if you can take advantage of this opportunity that you wouldn't have had if this hadn't happened? Yes,
exactly.
Yeah.
Which leads us to quotes. You can say anything to anybody if you're quoting someone else.
Was it in Frogs into Princes where Richard Bandler's talking about being on stage with a bunch of psychologists?
Here's what it was. You're on the right thing. Bandler told the story where he told a story about Erickson.
Oh, right. Erickson.
And he said Erickson was traveling and he stayed at this B&B that was on a chicken farm. And in the night, he couldn't sleep because the chickens were going, making all these chicken sounds. So he got in his wheelchair, trundled outside. Oh, turkeys. There were turkeys.
Yes.
It trundled outside and went into the pen where they all were and turned the light on. They all looked at him and he pointed at them. As he says it, Bandler points at all the psychiatrists and said, you're all just a bunch of stupid turkeys. And then he went back to his story. Now he's quoting Erickson, but he's saying to the psychiatrist. Afterwards, they came up and said, oh, good talk, Mr. Mandel. That was really good. Did you get the part about the turkeys? And he said they're going like, profound.
Yeah. And in that case, it didn't have much of a purpose other than Bandler being a joker.
Right.
But
he's good at.
Using the quotes technique is very, very effective. I remember I was in a cab jail cell. Probably 18, 20 years ago. And I was in a taxi in the city of Montreal, and he was driving us to our hotel, and he just would not stop talking. And I remember I said something to the effect of, I remember being here in 1999 to go and see a U2 concert. And there were these people beside me, and they just would not stop talking. So I just eventually turned to them and I said, would you please shut up? And thankfully they listened. But that was the last time I was in Montreal. It's been a while. And this guy, he stopped talking. It worked.
Well, no surprise. I mean, it's not exactly subtle, is it? It's like you got a banker in your office and you got to use a metaphor and you say, once upon a time there was a banker.
It was so obvious, but it was.
Are you saying I got a problem in my marriage? Is that what this is about?
It was just a very, maybe not even elegant use of the quotes technique, but it worked, But I wasn't directing. He can't analyze it and go, oh, he was telling me to shut up. I was literally telling a true story.
Right, and you fleshed it out more.
Yes.
Yeah. And yet, you've learned from the experience, so you'd be even more subtle next time.
Yeah, for sure I would, yeah. But if you're just starting out, I don't think there's any reason to be overly subtle in the beginning. People typically won't notice this stuff.
And yet, if they do notice, it can undermine you incredibly.
Yeah, so and yet is another one of those words that causes reconsideration. 2 words, yeah, one of these phrases.
Reconsideration. It causes them to look at a situation with fresh eyes. So the person says, oh, I've struggled at this job. I worked this hard, and then they wind up firing me. I'm never going to be able to get ahead.
And that can be a segue into the what if that we were just talking about.
Sure.
Right? And yet, what if this was the best opportunity for you in the last 10 years?
Or I'm thinking more in terms of, and yet there's all sorts of things you have triumphed over in life, aren't there?
It's a good segue to another statement that can help people reconsider.
It can also, it can be almost like a resource reset. Like they hit the reset button and realize they still have resources. I love and yet.
Yeah.
And yet I find you're not using it often enough.
Yeah, that's right. Today was just a disaster of a day. And yet tomorrow's a new day, isn't it?
Could be even worse tomorrow. The negative power of and yet.
Right.
Can you imagine, Chris?
All right. Can you imagine? So this is another obvious, it's a yes set type question, because of course people can always imagine, right? That's an important thing. Unconsciously, when you ask someone, can you imagine, as long as it's imaginable, if you were to ask somebody, can you imagine that the universe is never ending? Some people might have a real hard time imagining that, so you're not going to get an unconscious yes out of them. But normal things, can you imagine what it'll be like, Mike, when people email us and tell us how awesome this episode was?
And yet, there are probably aspects to it that are just annoying to all of us. Can you imagine? It looks at potentiality, doesn't it? It looks at possibilities. And if you can imagine things being different, it's the first step to making them different.
Yeah.
People being at cause in their own lives again. And it's very much like, I wonder. It can be, I wonder what, I wonder when, I wonder how, I wonder who, I wonder what else you're going to discover that's going to be helpful.
Yeah. I may have used a variation of this with my daughter, a week or so ago. She came to me and she had missed a math class on scientific notation.
Okay.
And I didn't know that she hadn't learned it yet. So she was asking me to help her with her homework. And I assumed that she'd already learned the topic. So I was talking above her skill level because I didn't realize she didn't know this yet. And she got really upset, almost like not in tears, but very emotionally annoyed at the fact that she wasn't getting it. I realized very quickly, patterned her up. Oh, you didn't learn this yet. I didn't know that.
Right.
Well, the good news is this is actually a really simple thing to understand. And can you imagine how simple it's going to feel in about 5 minutes when you already understand it? And then she was, oh, yeah. And I got her to smile about it, right?
That's a beautiful redirect.
Ask the question, then get back to it, teach the concept, and then check in. Oh, okay. 5 minutes later, she understands this. It's really simple. And I just asked the question again. And so how do you feel now that this is so easy for you? And she just loved it. It was great.
Nice. That's nice. Well,
this is simple applications.
Too. That's good, buddy. That's good. Now, you might not have noticed that all the time you were saying that. I was just trying to hurry you along.
Yeah, you were hitting the microphone.
Well, I was adjusting it. No, that you might not have noticed, I'm not being mean here, is our next pattern. And it draws attention to things that are outside of conscious awareness, outside of our 7 chunks of information, magic number 7 plus or minus 2. So it can be, you might not have noticed that you've already begun to relax. You might not have noticed that your breathing has just changed.
Yeah, or simply in a conversational situation where you're not doing hypnosis on someone, you might not have noticed all the other times in your life where you've solved that problem.
That's nice. I like that one. Yeah, yeah.
So think about it. Where can you use you might not have noticed?
Excellent. And which brings us to because.
Oh, because. What a wonderful language pattern. And
Robert Cialdini talks about it in Influence Theory and Practice. And he talks about, he thought that it worked because it was giving a rationale for whatever you're asking the person, do this because such and such. But I believe it's entirely because anything you put in front of because as a simple standalone command will become embedded and analog marked just by positioning the sentence. So have a good night's sleep because it's going to be weekend soon. I mean, the reason is irrelevant.
Yeah. Clean your bedroom because we're going out for dinner tonight.
Right. And there doesn't have
to be a connection, but it shouldn't be an obvious, absurd non-connection.
Right. Because you won't do it congruently.
We joke about, get me a cup of coffee because there are birds on the roof. That's
look at that bird.
That is absurd and will be noticed, right? That will break rapport.
Yeah, you've got to be subtle and gentle with this stuff.
Now, I also want to point out that the book to purchase for this is Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion. I think your reference to Influence Theory and Practice is one of his.
It was the earlier one.
No, it's later. I think
No,
he wrote.
that was one of the first ones I ever had.
You're wrong.
Actually, no. And we'll be coming back in the next podcast.
It's the first book he ever wrote.
Well, maybe he revisited it. Which one is?
Influenced the Psychology of Persuasion. Cialdini's first book.
I'm not sure on that. The one I have is In Theory and Practice.
If I'm wrong, we're going to admit it in the next podcast.
Yes, you are.
All right.
Okay. So, and yet
it won't matter because it's probably in both books.
That's right. So what will it be like, Chris, when you discover that you're completely wrong?
Well, I don't know. That's interesting.
Well, that's what will it be like?
That causes
pattern.
someone to uncover their outcome, right? What will it be like? It presupposes that something will be true,
like something,
right?
Yeah.
Like something else. Like, what will it be like?
And what will it be like, comma, when?
Yeah,
is
when.
a huge presupposition.
When presupposes it's happening. So for example, if I think to, when you said that, it makes me think of my work on handstands and gymnastic strength training. When I can do a press handstand,
nice.
What will it be like when?
Or
that has an answer to me. Like, well, I'll just feel so on top of the world like that time I saw someone else do some impressive thing and I thought it was so amazing.
You'd be sort of like a reversed Atlas holding the world up. You know, brilliant Greek mythology coming in there. I'd just like to point out that what will it be like when is a great one. Martial arts class, when you have a new student who has no information, they're brand new, they're freaked out, and you say, what will it be like when you're able to throw someone twice as big and heavy as you?
Yeah.
Well, that'll be awesome.
This is a really good time maybe to bring up evidence criteria too. So if somebody comes into that martial arts studio and you want to know, well, what is your outcome, right? So you don't want to say, what do you want? Because that seems, what would you like to have happen from taking this class? Well, I want to feel strong even though I'm small. And then you can, again, well, what would it be like when you realize you can throw people twice your size?
Notice the difference between what would it be like.
What will it be like?
Possibility. What will it be like is necessity.
What will it be like?
You know, Chris, with our time frame here, I think we should jump right to feel, felt, found, because that is such a good pattern.
All right. Yeah, we've only got a few left. So let's
This was taught to me by a friend of mine who's since deceased, a friend of Kenny Upton, to our friend Les, passed away 2007. But this is a great pattern. He got it from a book. He said it was called How to Think on Your Feet, but there's about 5 books by that title. So I never
we were looking for the actual, we're actually looking for the real, if anyone knows, email us, info@MikeMandelHypnosis.com. That goes to both Mike and I. And we'd love to know what book this actually came from originally. Feel, felt, found. Really easy to remember. Let's explain it.
It's whenever someone gives you any kind of resistance towards purchasing something, doing what you want to do, whatever. This is the language of persuasion, and it's powerfully hypnotic.
So let me give you something to resist. So, Mike, I think I'm just gonna quit coffee. It's just a pain in the ass to make coffee every morning.
Well, I know how you feel, Chris. A lot of people have felt that way, but what we found is that when you get a good coffee maker, it becomes a joy again. And I'd like to offer you the XO 5000.
Nice, there you go.
Yeah. So that's agree with it. You agree with their feelings. I know how you feel. That's agreeing with their feelings. Then you validate them further by putting them with the group of other people. This is bandwagon. Others have felt the same way. So
you're
feel,
giving
felt,
them
found.
social proof.
Social proof. I know how you feel. In other words, you're saying it's completely normal to feel that. Well, others have felt the same way. And here's where you shift gears. But what we found, is that once you such and such, you'll love it's amazing.
Yeah,
that's
the fireman's pole, Mike. That's
I thought it was the amoeba.
That's economy of movement. So it is. I know how you feel. Validate. Others have felt that way. Now you're in a group of like people. And what we've found is, so hey, if you want to be one of us, if you want to stay part of this crowd that I just made you a part of in the last fragment, then you have to feel this new way too.
Nice. And sooner or later, Chris, people will start applying this. Sooner or later is a great pattern because it's the same as the next one eventually.
Yeah.
It basically says, we don't know what the time frame is. This might happen this morning. It might happen 2 years from now. But sooner or later, you're going to reevaluate that job and move on to something else.
Yeah, sooner or later can be thought of as presupposing in a double bind sort of way. You're presenting either sooner or later, whereas eventually is just this vague time frame, but it means the same thing.
Yeah.
And as long as the statement is truthful, eventually you will move past this. And Can you imagine what it'll be like when you look back to now and realize that this is all in the past?
And I wonder how good you'll feel when you discover that, because you might not have noticed that the change is beginning already. All right. So leads us to tag question.
You can explain that, can't you?
Can you not? Yeah. A tag question puts the question at the end. It sort of puts things out of sequence, but it's very difficult to disagree with, isn't it?
That's right.
Jamie Smart did these really, really nicely. I watched them on video with tag questions. And yeah, he was very good at doing this, wasn't he?
He was. So the idea is you're adding a wasn't he, didn't he, isn't that true, whatever it is. Can you not? You're asking a question at the end that is going to have a yes answer.
My wife and I used to get into stupid discussions on this. We'd be arguing, and she would always say, she would always talk in the negative because she's a 6. She wouldn't say, can you see what I'm talking about or something? She'd say,
you don't see what I'm saying.
No, she'd say, can you not understand what I'm saying? And I would say, yes, I can not understand. I just start spinning it back linguistically again, which didn't really help my marriage very much. No, but and the double bind. Offer only 2 alternatives, but make sure whichever one they choose, you're going to get just what you want. This is what clever salespeople do intuitively. Do you want to sign the contract now, or should we wait till after lunch? Well, I haven't got time for lunch. I guess we should sign it now. Yeah,
the double bind can be around the order that things are done. It can be
Derek Balmer.
It could be who's going to do it. You know, who prefers to sign this contract? Person A or person B?
Right.
You know, who's the right person? It's implying that one will be.
Yeah. Right? Would you rather this or this? Would you rather have the hypnosis chair or the trance chair?
Would you rather go for a run or just do a light jog today?
Rather go for a
run or a root canal. Yeah. Would you rather go for a run together or just do a light jog instead?
Now, all these things, guys, our listeners, all these things are so powerful. We use this stuff all the time. We've got great lives, and this is one of our tricks. Use this stuff because it works.
Absolutely.
And that leads us, Chris, to your empowering question for all of us.
All right. So here's your empowering question for episode 163. What will it take for eventually that thing you want to have happen that has been elusive to show itself as an action that will take you, I mean really take you, to the fruition of all that's needed for you to, by changing yourself, cause it all to occur? That's right.
That's right. Well done, buddy. Well done. And the Meta 5 for today is one I've never told before. It's the organ loft. I began to take note of my dreams many years ago when I recognized something interesting. I found out that my unconscious mind was using the same soundstage, the same set for multiple dreams. I had one dream in particular that I was in sort of a village, maybe Italy or something like that, in a village street. At the end of the road, there was wooden steps going down a steep sand dune to a beautiful beach, maybe 100 feet below. And the beach was in this bay of blue waters and people sitting on this beach. And I remember being at the top and looking down. And maybe a year later, I dreamed that I was on a cruise ship. I think I had to do a show on it in my stupid dream. We came around a corner, a bend, and looking up at the mainland, I was looking at a bay and the beach and the wooden steps going up to the village, the same scene from the other angle that I dreamed about many months beforehand. But one recurrent theme was a house. I've tried to explain this to people over the years. There's a series of dreams I've had for many, many years, maybe 30, 40 years. And the theme that keeps coming back is an atmosphere. Not a scary one, but a spooky one. It's a house. And sometimes Earl Beatty Public School is involved and it's deserted, where I went to school. And sometimes it's Strathmore Boulevard, this street near Woodington, where I grew up. But the common element is there's always this house. And on the top floor of the house, this spooky house, through this rickety flight of stairs, there's like this little chapel with an organ loft up there and a place for a small choir to sit. And it's always an eerie atmosphere. And it's returned from time to time over the years. And I haven't got a clue what it means.
Thanks, everybody. This has been episode 163 of Brain Software with Mike Mandel. And I'm Chris Thompson, who admits to being very confused because I thought Organ Loft was going to have something to do with a kidney or a heart or a lung or something like that.
Some sort of organ.
I wasn't thinking the instrument. So head on over to MikeMandelHypnosis.com. Sign up for your free trial of the Mike Mandel Hypnosis Academy, which is our flagship online training and certification program. It's awesome. Tons of amazing content. It elaborates on all of the things that we just talked about in this podcast. And in addition, if you're interested in our hypnotic language cards, which have language patterns on every single card, regular poker cards, otherwise you can play cards with them. They are at MikeMandelHypnosis.com/cards, that is. So we'll see you again in the next episode.
Thanks again.
And good night.
And that.